Wow, that was a lot easier than I thought it would be. I couldn't find a shovel, so I just kind of chucked his body out in the woods. But the local wildlife around here, extraordinarily helpful. There was a pack of coyotes just passing on through. They took care of that like garbage collectors. Just like, here you go, okay, have a good one. Pip pip cheerio. British phrases. Okay, hey everybody, Vampire Tekking here, and welcome back to the 13 Nights of HoroWeen. Woo! Counting down the top 13 villains and antagonists in the One Piece story. I feel like I should clarify that, because when the guy named the series, he put best villains in One Piece, and some people were like, you know, Smoker's not a villain, he's an antagonist, you know. I'm assuming that he probably didn't name it that way, like villains slash antagonists, because that wouldn't have a ring to it, like too much stuff going on in the title. But he's still an idiot, and if it's any constellation, he's a coyote's, you know, supper tonight, which is good, because they look kind of emaciated. All right, today is number 8, and don't worry, it's not a joke entry like last time with Hattori. This is somebody that's really freaking serious. I feel like in order to do this properly, I need to go put on some clown makeup. You know what? Just give me a second. I'm sure he's got something in his, like, prop trunk or something. There we go. Let's see. A little bit of that, a little bit of green. I don't know why this is the only design he has at the ready, but, okay, am I winning yet? Oh, okay, anyway, Buggy the Clown, or Buggy D Clown, if you want to go with that. I know, Oda, I know what he's doing. The fact that after he becomes a warlord, and the initials for Buggy's delivery are B and D, I see what you're doing there. Everyone else can't see it, but I can. Right, so Buggy the Clown, man, the genius, the absolute mastermind behind everything in the story. What can you say that hasn't already been said before? No, but seriously, you know, it's really quite incredible, because Buggy just started out as one of those just throwaway fodder villains that are introduced only to show how strong the main cast members are. You know, like every shonen manga, for the first arcs, for the first, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 chapters, you know that every villain or enemy that the main characters encounter are just gonna get their asses kicked. They're just there to show how strong initially the main cast is, like in Fairy Tail, which is, by the way, one of my favorite manga. Like in Fairy Tail, when Natsu fights against that imposter Ignil in the first chapter, like, you know that, oh man, this guy's gonna be badass. No, you know he's gonna wipe the floor with them. He's just there to show how strong Natsu is. And for the first few villains in One Piece, we really had that, you know. Luffy shows up at Shelltown, beats the shit out of Morgan, beats the shit out of Alvida before that, and then he arrives in Orangetown, Buggy's there. He's already kind of a clown to begin with, because he's literally dressed as his clown, that's kind of his thing. And you know, to be fair, he manages to, like, lock Luffy in a cage, and you think, oh no, is Luffy gonna get out of this one? But of course, you know, a few chapters later, Luffy just bazookas him out of the town, you know, and that's it. Although, there are a few things of note here. For one thing, Buggy was the first opponent that Luffy ever fought against that had a Devil Fruit ability. So to show us, the audience, you know, what other kind of wacky abilities are out there. So Luffy, you know, has to kind of think out of, well, at least Zoro has to think on his feet here, because he's impervious to Zoro's cutting attacks. He has the Bara Bara no Mi, of course, the Chop Chop Fruit, which is kind of like an opposite inversion of Luffy's ability, whereas Luffy is immune to blunt attacks and weak to sharp attacks. Buggy is the exact opposite. He gets hurt by blunt physical attacks, but slicing attacks do not harm him. And he can also, the same way as Luffy can stretch his arms out, Buggy can dismantle his body, send out his hands to, like, grab somebody and pull them, you know, towards him. There's a definite range that's around him, sort of like an invisible sphere where his body parts cannot be controlled after a certain point. But even if his body goes beyond that point, it's not like they, you know, they die or anything like that. The body parts are still there. He doesn't bleed or anything when he separates, just because Oda wanted to make sure there's no, you know, like, because imagine if it was done realistically, you'd see muscle and bone, and it would be just kind of disgusting. But the great thing is, even from the beginning, even from the Orangetown arc, in, like, chapter 8 or whatever it was, Oda had plans for Buggy beyond just being a fodder villain. because he set things up in that arc. Like, Buggy, he knew who Shanks was, and he not only just knew Shanks, he sailed on the same ship as him, and we didn't know that Shanks and Buggy were part of the Pirate King's crew at this point, but we knew that they were together, and that they knew each other, and that's really big, because we find out later how important Shanks is as a Yonko, and how, in connection with that, holy crap, Buggy used to sail with him, and then we find out that it was Goldie Roger's ship. So I have maybe Oda didn't have every little piece, figured out, but even early on in the Orangetown arc, that was the first arc we get to see Rayleigh. We get to see Rayleigh there as the first mate of the Roger Pirates. So Oda really had this in a plan set in motion years and years and years before it was even integral to the plot. So he definitely was going to bring Buggy back again, but from us as the reader, for somebody that's just getting into One Piece that doesn't know anything about it, you might just write him off, and that's the beauty, because he keeps coming back. He comes back in Log Town trying to enact his revenge on Luffy with Alvida now in her slim body form. This is after she eats the devil fruit, the Suba no Mi. But of course it fails. Actually, you know what? It almost doesn't. Buggy almost straight up caps Luffy. He almost manages to slice his head off, and there's nothing that anybody could have done about that. Even Luffy was pretty confident that he was going to die. Like, okay, well, this is where my journey ends. And, Sanji and Zoro were there, but they couldn't do anything about it. So it was Dragon that saved Luffy, of course, bringing the lightning, calling down the thunder. Or maybe it was Eneru. Maybe Eneru did it. He was up there in the Sky Islands, and he's like, I sense that this young man might actually prove useful to me in the future or something. I don't know. But yeah, it was Dragon. It was Dragon that saved Luffy, of course. Brought down a lightning bolt, managed to, Luffy's made of rubber, so it doesn't affect him. It frees him from the scaffolding, and Buggy's the one that gets electrocuted. After this point, though, Buggy still has, he wants to try to find Luffy and capture him, but after arriving on the Grand Line, he sort of has his own goals to try to find the elusive treasure of Captain John, who's not as famous as Roger, but apparently still had a lot of swag, literally and streetwise. So anyway, he goes and tries to find this treasure. He eventually stumbles into a Navy base in this cave and gets captured and gets sent to Impel Down, level 1, which is the Great Prison. And of course, we all know what happens from there. Luffy arrives at Impel Down. Buggy kind of becomes one of his de facto crewmates while he's there, because Luffy's separated from the other Straw Hats. And Impel Down is my favorite arc in One Piece, simply because you get to see all these characters that we haven't seen in forever, and they're not just there for yucks. They're not just there like in a cover page or a cover story or a serial. They're here and they're actually integral again. Oda just takes these characters, and it's not like, okay, they're going to have one last hurrah and that's going to be it. No. He takes this, spins it around, Buggy goes to Marineford, has some shenanigans there, and then after the events of this, after we find out how important he is, after the whole world finds out how important he is and how lucky he was able to fly under the radar for so long, he gets invited to join the Warlords. Entirely just on pedigree and title, because Buggy himself is not really that strong. He uses bluster and bravado and just his massive amounts of luck in order to get through obstacles. And this is even shown when he's the Warlord, and he's addressing his pirate dispatch society, how he uses his fruit to make himself seem so big and imposing, which is just a trick. Now, I like to hope anyway, that Buggy might have did a little bit of training over the course of the time skip, because really, if you think about it, if Buggy, his fruit is not a bad thing. It even allows him flight in a certain area. If he learned hockey, it would be good. He specializes in throwing knives. He can usually throw the throwing knives pretty good. He's a little bit of an engineer, like a weapons expert, like demolitions or explosives, scratch-built explosives or something, because he created this thing called the Buggy Ball, which is like a modified cannonball. Not only did he develop it like a regular cannonball size, but then he modified it to be like the size of like a gumball, and then he fits it into his shoe during Impel Down. Somehow he managed to sneak that in there. And then, I guess, if you really want to think about it, using his Devil Fruit ability, Buggy could, not just separate his arms and legs. He could, just take, imagine taking a small part of his arm out. Not the whole thing, but just a little bit. and then stick things in there like a compartment. He could do that, which I think is how he did manage to sneak the ball in there, but compress this explosive ball down to a tiny little gumball with all the destructive power. So that's very clever. I mean, that's not something anybody could just do. And also, his Devil Fruit seems to have like an automatic release, because during Marineford, he gets cut up by Mihawk, and at first it was a funny scene, because Mihawk dices him, Luffy grabs him, Gum scapegoat, and then Mihawk dices him up into like freaking sashimi, like really like razor thin edges, and then Buggy, of course, just, that won't work. And so people were like laughing at that, but then people started asking, well, if Mihawk would have used Hockey, he would have cut up Buggy like that, and I'm like thinking, wait, did he? Didn't he? I mean, maybe he did. I don't know. People have because if he separates before the blade even hits him, then it wouldn't matter if Hockey was infused, because the blade wasn't actually touching him. So people have hypothesized that, like, within, like, the first 0.001 milliseconds or whatever it was, or, like, within the first millimeter of the blade coming in contact, that's when his body automatically separates. And then when it separates, the blade passes right through. So, even somebody with Mihawk's godly skills couldn't actually manage to cut him. So it's an actually really useful fruit. Don't laugh when people talk about, like, oh man, Buggy's gonna be, he's Will of D, he's Buggy D Clown, or, oh, Buggy's so strong, it's just that everyone else just thinks he's weak. Some of it's hyperbolic, like Buggy becoming, like, the genius mastermind behind everything, but I think certainly Buggy is gonna play a central role in finding One Piece and being part of, like, that, because they've hinted at a war after Raftel. Like, Buggy is gonna be, like, there when that goes down. Don't think he won't be. Alright, we might actually see some stuff from Buggy that might flip it around from what started off as like a comic relief, just kind of one-off villain, to something that could actually be really emotional. Like, can you imagine if near the end of the story, I would imagine the tone would be a lot more serious at this point than it is now. Like Buggy meets Shanks again, and they decide to reconcile, or like decide to fight together against an enemy, or Buggy has to end up sacrificing himself for somebody. Like, I imagine later One Piece is going to be way more dramatic than right now, just because how many years it's been through. I mean, you gotta really pound it in near the end. I would definitely think that it's very likely that Buggy has the Will of D. He has a tremendous amount of luck, and the fact that he was, he's on Roger's crew and everything like that. And by the way, Shanks probably has it too. I can't think of any reason why Shanks would not have it. It's just we don't know Shanks' full name, but we'll probably learn that at some point. Buggy's definitely going to be relevant again. Maybe not right now, maybe not for a while, but definitely going to be relevant near the end. I think Oda's going to bookend his journey with something that's going to be very entertaining. But anyway, I've jawed on about Buggy long enough. Go and check out the video that guy did a while back, and I'll give you the full scope there. But thanks for watching, everyone. Later. Signing out.